Bonjour à tous et bienvenue aux Rencontres du Développement Durable en partenariat avec l'Institut Open Diplomacy et le SCP Business School. Nous allons aujourd'hui recevoir M. Jan Werner, le délégué général de l'Agence spatiale européenne, pour parler espace et développement durable. Mais avant, je passe la parole à Théo Bernini, délégué au G7 des jeunes.
Bonjour à toutes et tous, je m'appelle Théo, je suis étudiant et j'ai eu la chance cette année d'être l'un des délégués français au sein du G7 des jeunes, qui est donc ce groupe d'action chargé de mettre en place des recommandations destinées aux chefs d'État et de gouvernement des pays du G7. Et donc pendant plusieurs mois, nous avons négocié, débattu, travaillé avec nos partenaires canadiens, américains, européens et japonais pour faire ces fameuses recommandations, mais surtout pour porter la voix des jeunes, porter leurs révoltes parfois, leurs ambitions, leurs rêves, et finalement contribuer à résoudre ces objectifs de développement durable. Pour ma part, j'ai eu la chance de travailler sur un sujet qui est au cœur de la vie de tout le monde et de tous les jours, qui est l'énergie. Il s'avère que l'énergie est à la fois un défi et une opportunité pour réaliser ces fameux objectifs de développement durable. Et nous avons donc porté 4 grandes ambitions que je vais décrire rapidement aujourd'hui. Tout d'abord, et c'était pour nous une évidence, même si ça ne l'est pas pour tous les chefs d'État et de gouvernement, l'application stricte et rigoureuse de l'accord de Paris. Ensuite, faire des plans de relance post-Covid, pas seulement des plans de relance, mais avant tout des plans de transformation de l'économie et de nos sociétés. Ensuite encore, miser sur l'énergie du futur pour concilier à l'avenir besoins croissants en énergie et ressources limitées. Et enfin, et c'est l'un des objectifs de développement durable, garantir l'accès à tous à une énergie propre, fiable et abordable afin de réaliser cette transition dont nous avons tant besoin dans un esprit de justice sociale. Et finalement, toutes ces ambitions que nous avons portées avec les délégués françaises et français et nos camarades européens et étrangers, c'est celle de l'action face à l'urgence climatique. Et dans la lutte contre le changement climatique, la plus grande tragédie finalement, ce n'est pas l'ignorance, car nous savons, mais la cécité. On ne croit que ce que l'on voit. Et c'est pour cela que l'espace est indispensable, non pas pour fuir la Terre, même si parfois c'est tentant, mais pour la regarder et la comprendre. Et nous avons pour cela aujourd'hui la chance d'accueillir le directeur général de l'Agence spatiale européenne. Et puisque nous allons parler de l'espace, j'aimerais citer son premier homme, Youri Gagarin, qui fut pas seulement le premier homme à se rendre dans l'espace et à voir l'espace, mais surtout le premier homme à voir la Terre et à voir à quel point la Terre était belle. Et bien Youri Gagarin, dans sa fusée, plein d'enthousiasme et d'audace avant de s'envoler pour l'inconnu, a eu cette phrase. Il a dit « Allons-y ». Aujourd'hui, c'est à nous de regarder la Terre, de voir sa beauté depuis l'espace, de voir les enjeux qui la rongent et de dire, à notre tour, allons-y. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup Théo. Nous allons donc retrouver tout de suite M. Jan Werner, directeur général de l'Agence spatiale européenne. Est-ce que vous m'entendez bien, M. Werner?
Oui, merci beaucoup.
Je rappelle aux internautes qui nous suivent qu'ils peuvent poser leurs questions sur la plateforme des Rencontres du Développement Durable. Et par contre, je vais passer en anglais pour discuter avec M. Werner, parce que ce sera beaucoup plus facile. Thanks a lot for being here today, Herr Werner. First of all, I would like to know, when we think about climate change, how can space help us to understand better the climate change?
Thank you very much, and also thank you very much that give me the opportunity to speak today. So the situation of climate change is very similar to the thing of COVID, because there are some similarities. I will try to explain that. First of all, you have to discover the effect. So in the case of COVID, it was discovered in China, in Wuhan. Some people were ill, and then they investigated it, and they found out this is a coronavirus. Now with the climate change, it was also, we had to discover it. It was not written in a book that there is already climate change. And it was found, not on Earth, it was found on the planet Venus, because one of the missions looked to Venus and found a greenhouse effect. And then some people said, okay, if there is a strong greenhouse effect on Venus, maybe we have the same issue on Earth. And yes, we have the greenhouse effect on Earth, and therefore the climate change is a fact. Now, what can do space? Now we have to look again back to the virus. After you discover it, you have to look to it, to monitor it. This is done all the time, and it's of course, as we know all, still an issue because a big number of infections day by day. It's the same with climate change. We have to monitor it. We have to monitor different things like temperature, melting of glaciers, NOx in the atmosphere, CO2 in the atmosphere, and so on. So we are monitoring all of these effects. And by the way, more than 50% of the so-called global climate variables can be measured only from space. So we are measuring them put the data for the public and for the scientists. Now the next step is the same again as with COVID. You have to raise awareness. You have to raise awareness for the general public, but also for the politicians. This is done in COVID, as we ask all people to wear masks here and there, to keep distance, etc., etc. Now it's also the same as climate change. We have to raise awareness so that people really behave. People meaning now individuals as well as industry and politics. And only then the last step is mitigation. Mitigation in the case of COVID. We hope all that there will be vaccination possible very soon, but also at that time we are looking for stronger medicines. And now looking to climate change, we also have to see how to mitigate. So what can space deliver for the mitigation of climate change? Can we do something? We are observing, we are giving all the data. Is it enough? No, it's not enough. What we can, for instance, deliver is with satellite navigation, we can give the information what is the most climate positive route from A to B. Not only what is the shortest route, what is the fastest route, but also what is the greenest route. This is one point. Another aspect is we know that contrails of airplanes are part of the issue of the climate change. By using several information about the atmosphere, the wind speed, the humidity in air, and taking the navigation system, we can find a better route for airplanes to have less contrails. So what we can do is both. We can observe, but we can also give mitigation methods to really reduce the effect of the climate change to a positive one.
Is there also a way that technology developed for space can help to mitigate the effects on Earth by transfer technology?
Yes, for instance, everybody is talking now electric cars, and where does the electricity comes from? So there are different possibilities, and one possibility is to use solar panels. Solar panels were developed for space because some 70 years ago nobody needed to have solar panels on Earth. That was not necessary, but for the space mission it was needed, and therefore the origin of solar panels is from the space development. And still today, the most efficient solar cells are coming from space. Right now, we are traveling to the planet Mercury. Mercury is the planet which is closest to the sun. So each and everybody would say, why the hell do you need efficient solar cells if you go closer to the sun? The problem is if you go on a normal way towards the sun, and put your solar cells directly in front of the sun, they will be burned. So we have the solar cells with a strong inclination when we are traveling towards Mercury, but because of the strong inclination, we get less electricity, and therefore highly efficient solar panels were necessary. Again, this is now used on Earth as well, and there are other technologies like fuel cells developments and other things which we are using on Earth, which are coming from space. The only thing which does not come from space is a Teflon pen. That is a legend. It does not come from space.
You were talking about COVID and the current pandemics. Did you observe from space effects of the global lockdown? Was it visible from space?
Yes, we could see the effect in two ways. One is we could see the long lines of people waiting in front of measurement of COVID testing facilities. So the cars or the people waiting there.
That's visible from. Sorry, that's visible from space?
Yes, it is. We cannot see the name of the individual person, but we can see the lines, the lines which are waiting. Yeah, we did that because the European Commission was asking us to deliver some data about that. And what we could see is the change of the atmosphere due to the lockdown because less industry was working. Therefore, we could see, for instance, that the NOx production in atmosphere was dramatically reduced, which some people believe, that's a very positive effect. My personal opinion is be careful, because it says at the same time that industry is not any longer working, and this is, of course, for our society very bad. So both has to be seen at the same time. Yes, we can observe from space the effect of COVID.
Before going to another topic, je voudrais juste rappeler aux gens qui nous suivent que vous pouvez poser vos questions sur la plateforme en ligne des Rencontres du Développement Durable. This week, the International Space Station had to move to avoid a space debris, the remains from a launcher. Is it going to be more and more pollution in space?
Right now, we have something like 750,000 particles of a size of at least 1 centimeter.
Okay.
And if you know the movie Gravity, you know that it's very dangerous. Such small, tiny particle with a speed of 28,000 kilometers per hour is faster than any bullet of a gun. And therefore it's dangerous. In addition, we have something like 4,500 satellites in orbit. Out of that, only 1,500 are still in action. That means 3,000 are space debris. And therefore, this is really a danger, not only for the International Space Station, but we had also accidents between satellites, between an American and a Russian satellite, Iridium and Cosmos. And it was close to an accident last year when there was one of the satellites of Elon Musk, of his Starlink mega constellation, was more or less close to one of our satellites, Aeolus, which is measuring the wind speed. So we had to move also the Aeolus in order not to have an accident. So this is a day-to-day activity, and this is not good for the future. We have to do something different.
What can we do to avoid that? Like, can we destroy them? Can we capture them?
To destroy them would be the worst.
Oh.
Because then you have more space debris. You should.
We are losing you,
destroy.
Mr. Werner.
They burn in the atmosphere. Either you bring them down so that they are burned in the atmosphere, or you bring them out of the orbit of Earth. So what we are doing, and the problem is, it's like on Earth. If you buy a new computer, you are ready to pay several hundreds of euros. But if it's waste, this computer, you're not ready to pay the same amount, right? So, and this was a big problem to convince the member states of ESA that we need money for waste management in space. But I was very lucky in autumn last year. I got the money for that. And now we will bring down an ESA-owned asset, which is orbiting the Earth and which is really space debris. And so we will bring it down very soon.
You were speaking about how you were lucky to get money. How does the European agency work to gather all its country? Because compared to other agencies, you don't depend from one country, but from several countries. How does that work?
We have 22 member states, and these 22 member states have their national interests. And so what we try with our programs is to really support their national interests. And this goes the following. The Director General puts proposals on the table every 3 years. So a proposal for missions, proposal for space debris management, proposal for solar flare, proposals for navigation, for telecommunication, to go to Mars or whatever. So I put a list on the table with price tags. What does it cost, each and everything? And then the different member states, 22, they can sign up, they can subscribe for the one or the other program. And if they pay, for instance, 10% for one mission or one program, then they are eligible to get 10% of the money which goes to industry back in their country. And this means they are very happy to support their national industry by this program. And this is a very successful method, which you don't find in other agencies. And so therefore I was very happy when I received in autumn 14.5 billion euros for the next 3 years subscribed by the member states.
We saw that after the COVID, the European country gathered together to put an ambitious economic plan. I have a question from one of our viewers. What kind of project should the European agency finance regarding global warming? what kind of project should the member be gathered around?
For global warming, you mean?
Yeah.
So we have a full program, which we have two programs which are covering this aspect. One is what we call the Earth Explorer missions, and the other one is, together with the European Union, the Sentinel, the Copernicus program. So, for instance, we will measure in the future also the CO2 in the atmosphere, because CO2 is one of the gases which makes the greenhouse effect. So, but at the same time, we are still measuring also for instance, the temperature of the sea, the sea level rising. We also measure that. So there are many, many things where we are giving the information to the public, to the politicians, to counteract global warming.
Another question from our viewer: do you work together with other space agencies to collect this data? Do you work with NASA and other agencies?
So ESA is in its nature already with 22 member states, and then we have 2 associate members, and then we have Canada also as a cooperative partner. We are already international, but we are working very intensively with the US, not only with NASA, but also with NOAA, which is a weather organization in the States. Then we are working together with other countries, especially in the field of climate change, with Japan. But also we have, of course, cooperation with other countries, and this is also the beauty of ESA, because we are already international. It's very easy for us also to cooperate with Russia or to cooperate with China and India.
Is it successful? Like, does it really help you to cooperate with countries like China, who are big on mitigating climate change?
I think it's a necessity. You cannot fight climate change just on a regional or national area. That's not just not possible. And I believe that space is bridging all the earthly crises which we permanently have in East and West. You know about sanctions, you know about nationalism and all of this. Space is really above all these earthly crises, and therefore it's important to keep space also as a method to work together, and by that you can also do something against climate change.
It gives you hope, the collaboration in the space field for other fields?
Yes, I have not only a hope, I'm convinced of that. Through space, we are cooperating. We were cooperating during the Crimea conflict. We are cooperating through all these earthly crises, and therefore this gives also always a possibility to show that we should work together, because our tiny blue dot, which we call Earth, is really a very tiny point in the universe, and we better work together, because the planet does not need us, but we need the planet.
We spoke a lot about cooperation between public agencies. Do you also cooperate with private company?
Yes, so this is a good question. I'm trying very much to convince our member states that the future of space is at least partially also commercial. And therefore, we have now also some programs where we have either public-private partnership, where the company and ESA are sharing costs, are sharing risk. But we also have programs where we ask industry to deliver a service for us. So cooperation with the private sector is, for me, of utmost importance. And I believe in the future we will see that a lot of tasks will be moved to the commercial sector. And the public sector will, of course, still remain for safety and security aspects, also for exploration and science. But I think a lot of our tasks which we have today can be done by industry in the future.
Is there not a risk, because we saw that in the industry there is a development, for example, of nanosatellites. Is it not a risk that the more players there is, the crowder the game is?
Yes, I'm afraid about, for instance, mega constellations and also new players in space, but I'm not really afraid, because I believe we should work together. Just to put waste into space is not a good thing, because nobody has an advantage of that. So the nanosatellites and the CubeSats, these small satellites, this is not a danger at all, because they are only in an orbit where they burn relatively early. They go down into the atmosphere. But you're right, we need also some clear rules. If somebody is launching a satellite, then from my opinion, he or she should have on board of this satellite either a possibility for automatic re-entry so that it does not become waste, or if this is not possible on the spacecraft, then I would like that they have to show a contract with a company signing up for bringing down the satellite after operation. And if this is also not the case, then we should look like we do with bottles and other things, so that they pay some amount of money to a public space agency, and this can use the money if they are not ready to bring the satellite down. If they do it by themselves, then they get back this money. So it's a deposit, like for other products, a deposit for satellites.
One question from the public. We hear a lot about private company, but most of them are Americans. Are there a company like that in Europe?
All the space activities in Europe are made by private companies, but they are getting a lot of money from the public side. But Airbus, Thales, OHB, Ariane Space, Ariane Group, all of these are private companies. They are not owned by the state. So they are private companies. What we are missing a little bit are these investors like Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson, Elon Musk, etc. But we are working on that. And if somebody is now listening and is an investor, so I can give him my name card and then we can have the contact.
Nous transmettrons donc si jamais un investisseur est intéressé pour financer des compagnies, l'ESA est tout oui. Another question from the public is, how do you make sure that the European Space Agency is not adding to pollution? Do you work on the fuel for launcher? How do you make sure that you are as environmental friendly as possible?
We are working on green propellants. This is very important, but one has also to see a little bit the number. So if we are talking about a launcher like Ariane 5, Ariane 6, we have something like, let's say, between 6 or 7 launches per year. And one launch is more or less polluting the same way as aircraft flying from Europe to the United States. So, and you know how many aircraft fly. But this is an argument for me to stop the development of green propellants. It is, for me, of course, clear sign we have to go for that. And the solution are liquid propellants, because, for instance, with hydrogen and oxygen, you burn it and you get water. And so the main engine of 5 is a hydrogen oxygen engine. So this is a good way, and we are looking into more green propellant in the future.
The fact that the European Space Agency work in multiple places in Europe, does it add to your carbon footprint, or is it a help?
We have some carbon footprint because of the transportation from country A to B, because none of our products is built in just one country. So this is a criticism which I have to accept, but we try to reduce also the carbon footprint of these activities, because we believe the advantage is still a big one, because we are building up a space industry in whole Europe and not only in one country. So, but it is an issue, and we try to have also green transportation.
A lot of space agency, new space agency, if I can call them like that, like India or China, and also the NASA are working towards small programs that don't cost a lot of money and that don't take years to develop. Are you also going into that direction?
In Europe, there is always a discussion, and they ask about new space. And then when I ask them, what do you mean with new space? 99% of the people are saying new space, that means a small company which is producing the rocket in the living room. I met these small companies, these fresh entrepreneurs, and they told me, no, this is not new space. New space is for us cost reduction, commercialization, innovation, agility, and flexibility. And this is something which we should really call new space. And then even bigger companies can be new space companies, and ESA, the European Space Agency, can be the European New Space Agency. I'm working very hard on that.
If you had one wish for the country to all come together to mitigate climate change, how would you do that? How can ESA set an example for that?
I would just say, forget about national vanities, forget about national interests. Climate is a global thing. Climate change is a global thing. Let's work together, not only in Europe, but on a global scale.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Werner. It was a pleasure to have you. And thanks again for all the things that you do.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.